The bright lights illuminated the set in a clean, crisp glow, reflecting off glass tables and polished camera lenses. Viewers had tuned in, expecting a spirited, yet civil, discussion on criminal justice reform. Few, however, could have foreseen the storm that would soon follow. At the round table sat two distinctly different figures. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, renowned for her composure and intellect, and Pam Bondi, former Attorney General of Florida, known for her strong, partisan tone. The host, calm and composed as always, opened the debate with his trademark neutrality. Ladies, tonight we are focusing on criminal justice reform, specifically the widening divide and how accountability is defined across party lines. Bondi leaned forward slightly, her smile controlled but confident. Well, we all know what this is really about. Democrats have gone soft on crime. They talk about reform, but what they mean is defunding the police, freeing violent offenders, and acting surprised when crime rises. Crockett did not flinch, her expression stayed poised. Pam, with all due respect, that is rhetoric, not fact. Reform is not about being lenient, it is about being effective. It is about breaking cycles of incarceration that hit communities of color hardest and creating systems that actually make neighborhoods safer in the long term. Bondi's laugh was sharp. Oh, please. I have prosecuted real criminals, Congresswoman. I do not need slogans about fairness. The tension in the studio tightened. The host tried to steer the conversation back, but the tone had shifted. The polite exchange was turning personal. Crockett continued, her tone even. This is not about your experience, Pam. It is about results. If those policies were working, we would not still see such high recidivism rates. Bondi interrupted. Results? You mean the chaos that has come since Democrats started treating criminals like victims? Crockett paused, then nodded slightly. That is once, she said quietly but audibly. Bondi blinked. Excuse me. You have interrupted me once, Crockett replied evenly. Her tone was calm, not defensive. Heads turned in the studio. It was subtle but clear, a quiet boundary had been set. Bondi smirked. Oh, I did not realize we were keeping score. Crockett smiled faintly. That is twice. The studio audience stifled laughter. The host hid a grin, trying to move forward, but Bondi was visibly unsettled. See, Bondi said sharply. This is the kind of theater Democrats resort to when they are losing an argument. Crockett tilted her head slightly. Actually, I am not performing, Pam. I am observing, because it is remarkable how often women, especially women of color, are told to stay calm or professional when that respect is not returned. Bondi scoffed. Oh, please, do not turn this into a race or gender thing. You are not being silenced, you are being challenged. Challenging is fine, Crockett said, still composed. Talking over someone is not. That is control, and that is 3. A murmur moved through the studio. The host shifted his papers, sensing the tension deepening. For a brief second, Bondi hesitated, realizing perhaps that Crockett was not playing along. Every attempt at dominance was met with quiet, steady acknowledgement. The host interjected gently. Congresswoman Crockett, you mentioned outcomes earlier. Could you explain what effective reform looks like to you? Of course, Crockett began. Safety does not come from punishment alone. It comes from education, job access, and mental health support, measures that prevent crime before it happens. They save money and save lives. Bondi waved her hand dismissively. Here we go again. The social work agenda. What is next? Therapy for felons instead of jail time. Crockett did not react. That is 4. Bondi crossed her arms. Are you really going to do this all night? Crockett smiled. Only if you keep doing it. A quiet laugh rippled through the audience. Even the host allowed a small grin. Bondi did not, her jaw tightened. Are we having a debate, or playing a counting game? Pam, the host replied carefully, you will both get equal time. Let us continue. Crockett spoke again, patient but firm. Let us focus on solutions, not slogans. While we debate, real families are paying the price. The system does not need harsher punishment, it needs accountability, including from those who make the laws. For a moment, Bondi did not respond. The words lingered in the air. Then, almost reflexively, she shot back. You mean accountability for criminals, right? Because last I checked, breaking the law is still illegal. Crockett turned toward her. That is 5. Half the studio looked stunned, the other half, amused. What began as a political clash had become something deeper, a calm dismantling of an old power dynamic. Bondi exhaled sharply. You think you are winning by counting interruptions? That is childish. No, Crockett replied softly. It is called recognizing patterns, and patterns tell stories, especially the ones people try to ignore. The room went silent. Even the host stayed quiet. Crockett continued, her tone reflective yet grounded. The thing about constant interruption is that it is not just disagreement. It is dismissal. It is deciding that one voice does not deserve to finish before another begins. That is not debate. That is dismissal. Bondi opened her mouth to respond, then stopped. For the first time, she did not interrupt. The camera tightened its frame slightly, catching Crockett's composed expression. The control of the moment felt complete, yet effortless. She was not asserting dominance, she was demonstrating calm authority. Bondi eventually spoke again, her tone cooler now. Fine, go ahead. I will let you finish. Crockett nodded, recognizing the shift. Thank you. I think we all gain more by listening than by reacting. That was how part 1 of their exchange ended. The pause after Crockett's words lasted longer than expected. The host cleared his throat quietly, the faint rustle of papers audible as cameras adjusted. Even the production crew behind the glass seemed unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the moment breathe. Then, with visible effort, Bondi smiled again, a brittle smile meant to reclaim composure. All right, she said with a short laugh that did not quite reach her eyes. You have made your point about interruptions. Can we talk substance now? Crockett nodded, firm but courteous. That is what I have been trying to do since the start. Seizing the chance to steady the tone, the host spoke up. Let us focus on policy specifics. Congresswoman Crockett, you have supported bills on police accountability and sentencing reform. Critics argue those measures might restrict law enforcement. How do you respond? Accountability does not weaken policing, Crockett replied smoothly. It strengthens it. When good officers are protected and bad ones are held responsible, trust improves, and that trust makes communities safer. Bondi shifted in her seat, shaking her head. You keep saying accountability, but what you really mean is control. You want oversight of every police department. That is not reform, that is interference. Crockett did not turn toward her, she kept her focus on the host. What I mean, she said clearly, is consistency. The law should not depend on your postcode. A citizen in one city deserves the same rights as one in another. Bondi interjected again. That is 6, Crockett said before Bondi could finish. Her tone was matter of fact. Soft laughter rippled through the audience. The host raised his eyebrows, not surprised anymore, just aware. The counting had become its own rhythm, the quiet backbone of the discussion. Bondi pressed on. You think this is funny? You think people suffering on our streets is a game? Crockett turned toward her, calm but steady. No one is laughing about lives lost, Pam. But it is interesting that you equate being held accountable in conversation with being silenced. I am identifying behavior, not playing games. Bondi exhaled sharply and leaned forward. You just love playing the victim, do you not? Whenever someone challenges your ideas, you pull the race or gender card. Crockett's posture stayed composed, but her tone deepened with quiet gravity. No one is playing a card, Pam. But when a woman of color has to remind you 6 times that she has not finished a sentence, maybe it is worth asking why that keeps happening. The mirror was turned back toward Bondi. The host quickly stepped in, trying to lower the tension. Pam, you have often spoken about your background as a prosecutor. How do you see reform coexisting with public safety? Bondi sighed, her tone defensive but measured. It is simple. Enforce the laws we already have. Stop letting politics decide who gets punished, and stop treating criminals as victims. That is the real problem, too much sympathy for the wrong people. Crockett listened silently, not interrupting. When Bondi finished, she spoke softly. That is the difference between us. You view punishment as power. I see justice as responsibility. Bondi frowned. Excuse me. Crockett continued. If the goal of law is order, that order should come from fairness, not fear. You talk about enforcing laws, but which ones? The ones that protect, or the ones that discriminate? Because this country has seen both. Bondi's tone hardened. I enforce the law. Period. And history shows, Crockett replied evenly, that enforcing unjust laws does not make them right. It just prolongs harm. A hush settled again. Even the host did not interject this time. The tension was not volatile now, it was precise. Crockett was not arguing, she was dissecting. Bondi broke the silence with a scoff. You are unbelievable. Everything is a lecture with you. That is 7, Crockett said gently. The counting returned like a quiet drum beat, steady and grounding. Bondi threw up her hands. You are obsessed with numbers. Numbers reveal patterns, Crockett said. 7 interruptions in under 15 minutes. That is not passion, it is avoidance. Bondi's cheeks reddened. Avoidance. I am confronting bad ideas directly. Crockett leaned in slightly, her gaze steady but calm. Then let us confront them without talking over each other. You will have your full say, and so will I. That is how adults debate, is it not? Her tone was not condescending, just measured. Bondi opened her mouth, closed it again, and finally leaned back in silence. The host stepped in to pivot. Let us broaden this out. Congresswoman, do you believe public trust in the justice system can be repaired? Yes, Crockett replied without hesitation. But only if we stop pretending the system is not broken. Reform means telling the truth, that justice has looked different depending on who you are and where you live. Bondi gave a small laugh. So now the system is unfair again. Crockett looked at her calmly. When did it stop? The question is not whether unfairness exists, it is whether we are willing to change it. Bondi pressed her lips into a tight line. You love dividing people. No, Crockett replied evenly. I value honesty. It is uncomfortable, but it is how we move forward. The cameras caught Bondi's face tightening again. She glanced towards the host for a redirect, but he stayed silent, recognizing that the moment unfolding needed no interruption. Crockett continued, her tone steady. Every time someone speaks truth about inequality, they are accused of being divisive. But denial has never united anyone. Acknowledgement does. Bondi interrupted almost instinctively. Oh, so now you are the moral authority. That is 8, Crockett said before she could finish. Laughter rippled quietly through the control room, even among staff trying to stay silent. The exchange was quickly becoming unforgettable television. Bondi glared. You think you are clever, do you not? Crockett shook her head slightly. No, just observant. Her tone was not smug, but calm, almost like a teacher offering perspective. Bondi leaned forward, voice slightly raised. You are everything wrong with politics today. Always playing the victim, always deflecting. Crockett did not blink. And yet here I am, letting you finish. That landed harder than any raised tone could. It was not about control, it was about composure. The host finally stepped in. His voice was gentler now, more reflective than moderating. Let us pause there. This is the conversation so many people are having right now, how to talk without shouting, how to listen without silencing. Crockett nodded. Exactly. Because this is not just about us, Pam. It is about millions of people watching who have been talked over their entire lives, in classrooms, at work, even at home. All I am doing is showing what it looks like to say, I see what is happening, and I am not letting it define me. Bondi did not respond. She looked away, her jaw tight. The camera zoomed in slightly, catching the flicker of emotion, confusion, frustration, maybe recognition. Crockett turned to the camera. And that is why reform matters. Until we fix the systems that normalize silencing, nothing changes. Whether it is in law enforcement or a discussion like this, silence is not peace, it is pressure. The quiet that followed was not awkward, it was aware. The host broke it softly. We will take a short break. As the lights dimmed and the theme music swelled, Bondi sat rigid, eyes forward, hands clasped. Crockett calmly folded her notes. The contrast was striking, one woman tense, the other composed. Something had shifted when the program returned. The tone in the studio was different. The air felt heavier, as if everyone understood they had just witnessed something rare, a genuine reckoning on live television. The host resumed his place, his voice carrying a hint of restraint. Welcome back. Before the break, we were discussing accountability in law enforcement and what reform should mean. Let us continue. Pam Bondi adjusted her mic, her expression controlled but tight. She was not used to being challenged like this, especially not on live television. I think what people at home want, Bondi began carefully, is safety. They want to walk outside without fear. And what the left has done, what people like Congresswoman Crockett have done, is weaken that security by vilifying police and excusing criminals. That is not progress, that is regression. Crockett waited for her to finish completely before responding. Her voice was calm but resolute. Pam, no one here wants unsafe streets. What we want is fairness in the system that enforces safety. The issue is not that people reject law and order, it is that too often the law itself has not been orderly. Bondi gave a short laugh. That is a cute sound bite. That is 9, Crockett said quietly. This time the audience reacted audibly, soft gasps and muffled chuckles. Even the host smiled briefly before catching himself. Bondi blinked, caught between irritation and disbelief. Are you seriously still doing this? Crockett leaned forward slightly, hands folded neatly on the table. Yes, because you are still doing it. Every time I try to explain something, you interrupt. And this is not just about me. It is about how many people are trained to accept that behavior as normal. I am just not accepting it today. The words were not loud, but they carried weight. It was not confrontation, it was clarity. Bondi tried to recover. This is ridiculous. You are making yourself the victim instead of addressing real issues. Crockett tilted her head slightly, her tone even. I am focusing on behavior that mirrors the system we are discussing. You talk over voices you do not want to hear. That is how power has worked for generations. So, no, it is not ridiculous, it is relevant. For once, Bondi had no immediate comeback. Her eyes darted towards the host, searching for intervention. But he stayed silent, letting the moment stand. Crockett continued, every time we avoid discomfort, we avoid accountability. You want law and order. Start with the law of basic respect. Let others finish their sentences. The room went still. The cameras moved in for a close-up, capturing a moment that would define the broadcast. Bondi finally broke the silence. You love preaching, do you not? No, Crockett replied without pause. I value clarity. There is a difference. Bondi leaned back, visibly irritated. Now you are twisting everything. I am not silencing anyone, I am debating. Debate is an exchange, Crockett said gently. You have been doing one and calling it the other. That was the turning point. Bondi's composure cracked. She shook her head. This is pointless. She looked toward the producers behind the camera. I am done with this. The studio tensed. The host looked up, startled. Pam. But Bondi was already removing her mic. I am not sitting here being lectured by someone who thinks keeping score is leadership. Crockett did not react, no smirk, no gesture, just a calm, steady voice. Sometimes keeping score is the only way people realize there is a game being played. Bondi froze briefly, then stood and walked off camera. The sound of her heels echoed faintly across the studio floor. The host, visibly unsettled, tried to recover. Well, I think we will continue with Congresswoman Crockett for the rest of the segment. The production team scrambled to adjust angles as Bondi disappeared behind the curtain. Crockett remained seated, composed, her hands resting lightly on her notes. Congresswoman, the host began. What just happened here? I think it speaks to something much bigger, does it not? Crockett nodded slowly. Yes, it does. Because what we just witnessed is not unusual. It happens every day when people are faced with accountability and choose to walk away instead of confronting it. Her tone was not triumphant, it was thoughtful, almost solemn. Reform, she continued, is not just about policy, it is about conduct. If we cannot even stay in a room long enough to let someone finish their thought, how can we expect fairness and justice outside of it? The host stayed quiet. The cameras focused on Crockett. She added, "You do not respond to disrespect with more disrespect. You hold up a mirror, because when people truly see themselves, they either grow or withdraw. What we just saw was withdrawal, but growth is still possible if we choose it." The studio was silent. Even the crew barely moved. The host finally spoke in a low tone. "That might be one of the most meaningful moments we have ever had on this program." Crockett smiled faintly. Meaningful moments are just honest ones. The show ended soon after, with the host thanking viewers and promising more open discussions ahead, but everyone knew the real conversation had already begun elsewhere. Within hours, clips from the exchange flooded social media. Viewers analyzed every glance, every interruption, and every calm response. Commentators called it a masterclass in composure and clarity. The exchange was replayed on major networks, late-night shows discussed it. By morning, headlines read, "Jasmine Crockett turns the tables on Pam Bondi. Calm over chaos. 9 interruptions, 1 lesson in how to command a room without raising your voice." Reactions were divided. Some praised Crockett's restraint, others accused her of political theater. Yet, no one denied the impact. In her office, aides showed Crockett the trending clips. She shook her head, smiling. "I was not trying to go viral," she said softly. "I just wanted to finish a sentence." Her communications director replied, "Well, sometimes finishing a sentence starts a movement." The phrase stuck. Within days, analysts dubbed her communication approach a new form of resistance that was measured, intentional, and steady. It focused not on reaction, but reflection. It turned confrontation into a teaching moment. Even academic circles took notice. Media scholars published articles examining how Crockett's composure and her act of calmly counting disrupted long-standing power imbalances in televised debate. As one columnist put it, Crockett did not dominate the space. She redefined it. Meanwhile, Bondi issued a short statement saying she had no regrets about leaving the interview. But for many viewers, her walkout became symbolic, not of strength, but of discomfort under pressure. Weeks later, Crockett returned for a follow-up segment. The host greeted her with a respectful smile. "Last time you were here," he said, "we witnessed a moment that sparked a national conversation." Crockett smiled back. "Conversations help us grow, as long as we let each other speak." The audience applauded. By then, her approach had evolved beyond a hashtag. It was being discussed in classrooms, workplaces, and leadership seminars as a model of emotional intelligence, proof that calm focus could dismantle aggression without matching it. Through it all, Crockett stayed consistent. When asked about her sudden fame, she always replied, "It is not about being loud, it is about being heard." And that became the true legacy of that night, not the clash itself, but the quiet clarity that followed, a moment when one woman refused to be interrupted into silence and, in doing so, taught a nation to listen differently.